In the last video, I mentioned that this month is actually Stress Awareness Month, and I talked a little bit about the 3 different levels of stress: eustress, stress, and distress. I'm Helene Kempe from Optimum Thinking, and today I thought we'd go on and actually share a few more tips about managing stress so that we can understand what to do about it as we feel it come up in our system. Because the indicator of stress is actually that feeling that we get in our system. The feeling comes from our thinking. We had to create meaning in our mind in order to create that reaction in our body. So a couple of the tips that I like to share with my clients are things like looking at the words you're using, because we program ourselves. So when you actually think about what you're saying to yourself in order to start creating that stressful feeling in yourself, you can actually look at changing those words to something more positive. I even use silly words sometimes and purposely putting crazy words into what I'm thinking, because that shifts my emotional state so that I can actually focus on what I'm getting back to do in my actual job. So if we actually stay in that emotional reaction, it's going to disempower us, and we're not going to be able to think clearly and get into action. So look at the words you're using. For example, if someone cuts you off in traffic, sometimes you'll jump straight to a stressy state. So sometimes I'll actually say, I'll call that person the silliest word I can think of in my mind to break my emotional state. So I might call them a giraffe or whatever comes to your mind. It doesn't really matter, in order for you to actually then realize you're creating that reaction in your body. So it's about self-leadership of your thoughts in order to create new feelings in your system so you can get on with your life. You can then create new meanings about that person cutting you off. You might say, wow, there must be someone really urgently needing them, and that's why they've had to actually cut me off and get ahead in traffic. So it's the meaning you make about it can then actually create a different reaction in your system. A second tip that I like to use is actually going and sitting down, taking yourself away from your work just for a few minutes, writing out your highest priorities, and then actually prioritizing your priorities. Make sure that you're doing the most important number one thing. Sometimes you might need to do a couple of little quick things and then get back to your number one thing. So write that on a post-it, put it on your computer, whatever you need to do to keep yourself focused on the number one priority, and get that one ticked off before you go on to number 2. Okay, so that's just a couple of tips to help you start to think about how you're managing your stress, to realize you're creating it through your thinking and start to shift your thinking in a different way. I'm Helene Kempe from Optimum Thinking, when positive thinking just isn't enough.